It's Sunday, August 9, 2026. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the Weekend Show, where we make the time to consider the news of the week. You can support my work and independent journalism on Substack at The Anthony Davis. Our guest today is a former advisor to the Middle East peace envoy and a political strategist who works in politics and football. Ashish Prashar, welcome back to the Weekend Show.
Thank you.
FIFA on Wednesday this week confirmed that Gianni Infantino will remain as president after a meeting of its senior executives in a statement that also revealed that he'd sent written apologies to the FIFA Council and the 211 member associations for failing to consult with them over the World Cup sell-off. The world governing body says he retains the full support of his leadership team, and as far as I'm aware, Donald Trump will reportedly do everything possible to support Gianni Infantino, who faces intense pressure to resign. You've actually been much closer to this story than people might realize. Tell us what's going on behind the scenes.
Right. This all started, of course, with Trump and Infantino's relationship. Look, anyone who knows anything about football or soccer knows that FIFA has a history of corruption. Of course, and it's tied. I mean, the US has actually intervened to prevent that corruption. The FBI famously arrested the last president of FIFA for corruption, and Infantino was originally put in to be the great change, right? The guy who's going to correct the course, make them, be more transparent and everything else. But he's doubled down on that corruption and has actually done what he's been around Trump too long, because he's doing it out in the open. Right. It's the thing that I think most Europeans knew about Sepp Blatter and previous administrations' corruption, but it's kind of behind the scenes. So it didn't embarrass them and they didn't care that much. And Infantino has taken it to a whole new level. And it really, really, really built up it really got too much in the build up to the World Cup with making up a peace prize. So Donald Trump would feel good about himself in the run up to the World Cup, but also just the overturning of the famous red card by the US soccer player, not letting Ronaldo, the famous soccer player, face the 2-match ban and run up to the tournament. The changing of the rules to fit something that Trump wanted, that the US wanted to put on the big show, was beginning to irk a lot of people already. There was obviously corruption behind the scenes regardless. But after a success, what they would deem a financially successful World Cup, the guy walked away saying, "I made 15 billion for you." And the reason I get annoyed about that statement, even before we even move on to what's really relevant here, is I actually think he, in his arrogance, kind of Donald Trumpian, forgets that it was the footballers that made them 15 billion. The product on the field and the fans that travel from all corners of the globe to be in Canada, America, Mexico for this World Cup. They made the 15 billion, not a technocrat sitting in an office. But what was really revealing is he's been spending a lot of time in that Trump bubble and around Jared Kushner and around people like that. And he got the idea of milking as much money out of this beautiful sport as possible from this crew that he's been around. The only difference is he's not really part of them. So as he proposes the great sell-off of the World Cup to Jared and Josh Kushner, think about that. Josh Kushner and Jared Kushner would own football, the only global sport, and their friends. And they would try to extract, destroy it for every last dollar, that they can. I think what he misplaced by doing that is the global resentment to them, regardless, to Trump, Kushner, and everybody else, but also the understanding that this is our game. It's not to be sold. It's not to say investors have not bought football clubs, have not invested in the game, but they don't own football. He was actually going to sell the World Cup and football to private investors so they could control how it's played, how it's streamed, who gets access to it, how you enter it, all the little details. And he was selling it as we'll make every country in FIFA rich, right? So every country will get 20 million if they sell their rights. 20 million. I know it sounds like a huge number.
It's a drop in the ocean in football world, yeah.
And people will say, "Oh, well, what about Chad or or Bolivia, but like even over a decade, 20 million is nothing, because even football in those countries can see that revenue because their players go play abroad, they bring money back, they do all that stuff. And finally, also, what he was hiding was the lining of his own pockets, because he saw what the NFL commissioner earned. He saw what the NBA commissioner earned, 50 million, 60 million. And he's only on 6-7 million in Switzerland as he sits. And he saw a global sport commissioner potentially earning double or triple that. He's looking at the 150 million mark.
So greed is really at the heart of this.
And what he saw with the Trump administration over his, look, he has been there, obviously. Obviously the World Cup was given to the US a while back, but he's really been in the White House, around the State Department, all this stuff since, the draw was made last fall where he awarded Trump that horrible Peace Prize. And he's been like in the US, and he's been around all this open corruption.
Yeah.
I don't think he just got,
rubbed off on him.
I just need a piece of that pie. And he saw how the president has been doing it in the opening, like manipulating markets every weekend when he's trying to bomb Iran or not bomb Iran, or make deals for his son in Kazakhstan and everything else. And I think he's seeing that this bold-faced corruption, why can't I do it? Who's going to stop me? And my friend is this, this president, who is going to stop me? And I think this is where his thing is misplaced, because while he is around them, he's not them.
Interesting. You mentioned the kind of phony Peace Prize. I mean, that came at a time when Donald Trump was really pushing for a Nobel Prize for himself, furious that Obama got one. I mean, furious that anybody got one, I'm sure. And so we saw a couple of these prizes, because I think Netanyahu gave him a prize as well, and, or certainly nominated him for a prize. I mean, this is it's like a child desperate for a toy. And so, to see Infantino do this, it was such a blatant and open visualization of his loyalty to Donald Trump.
100%.
And so from that point onwards, it was clear that nothing was going to be straight.
No.
And that ended up, of course, with Spain winning, and then Trump taking the cup off and literally trying to get in the picture and be the one to present it as if he was representing the World Cup. Because Trump thinks of himself as America. And when he refers to America's great riches and success in this moment, he's actually talking about himself.
Right. 100%. And what's really fascinating to me, Infantino just allowed for it. Right. He allowed anything that Trump wanted. Again, the overturning of the red card by a phone call from the president. There is rules of FIFA that say no political interference. Now, we know that's not necessarily true if you think about all the other issues FIFA has had the blind eye to, in some cases like genocides, but also in other places where they've done favors for other countries, right, like Qatar. But the president phones him and says, I need you to overturn a red card, and he did it. Like, this is insanity. Like, to the rest of the world, that was like, and, go Belgium, because I'm sorry, but they spanked the US in that game afterwards. But also the world was so annoyed about that. I actually think they would have not been so polarized against the US if Trump hadn't made the intervention. The irony of this, he turned everyone against the US in this moment, rather than other countries supporting either or. They were vehemently against him. And it was a very Trump thing. It's like he does everything to make everyone hate the United States in politics, war, but also now on the football field and sports. And what Infantino kept doing was placating to it, just kept doing it. And it really was because he was just behind the scenes designing this plan to sell to his son-in-law and his son-in-law's brother. And that's really what it was about. What's really fascinating is still go back to this part in the run up to through this week. There's been various stories about how Trump will have his back. The one thing I will say about that is Trump, in his own way, weirdly likes winners and losers. And right now, Infantino is not winning. Right, while FIFA have said, and also really important in your intro where you said the leadership council supports his staying as president, but it says what was really important in the letter was that for those who were present. It wasn't that many people at the meeting.
Yes.
So people that were present support him in his leadership, not the entire organization of FIFA, who has frankly been leaking stuff all week to the media about.
Right.
There's a project from staff called Project Kill the Monster. Like, they don't want him. Like, they're trying to get rid of him. Clearly they're leaking stuff. But also, moreover, Trump, if this gets too negative, you're not in his circle. That's just that simple. The man would dump his children if they got too negative. But like, I think Infantino is naive to think that Trump would protect him. That quote was given by Paolo Zampalli, who is, as everybody listening knows, one of the only people that the New York Times has done a complete investigation on his relations with Jeffrey Epstein, and also used ICE to deport his ex-wife to take their child. Is that the kind of person that should be supporting that Gianni Infantino wants the support of? Like, we know most people in the administration have got sordid histories, but he's one of the people that there was so much evidence that the mainstream media could literally print it and say, this man is scum. And he is the one going out there going, oh yeah, we got Infantino's back. If that's the future of football, that's not a football that my child wants to play or your child wants to play. That's the kind of friends he's got. That's not something that we want in the game. And secondly, what also came out was he blackmailed the Prince of Jordan. He wouldn't give the Jordanian players their dues from the World Cup unless he backed him in the next presidential FIFA election. To the point where Prince Ali, an ally of the United States, actually posted about it and said, this is what he did, I'll never support him. And that actually puts Infantino in a bit of a pickle because, look, we know Trump's allegiances are like fleeting, but he does need Jordan in this moment with Iran and everything else.
Right.
The bases in Kuwait and Bahrain are evacuated. And if he's picking between the royal family in Jordan or Gianni Infantino, Infantino becomes like a side note in his like career of side notes of people he's just dismissed after a while. And what's the words on the street is he's reached out to Trump 4 times and he's ignored him. And even Secretary Rubio was supposed to have a call with him, but after the New York Post broke the story, canceled the call. So while he's posturing, like he's got the big guy and he's got this thing behind him, he hasn't really been able to connect with him. And I think Trump's hedging his bets. Like if he's not around, who else is my son going to buy the World Cup from in the future?
I mean, look how far this has come. You know, we're referring to it as football. Of course, to our American viewers, it's soccer. It is something that certainly in the UK where you and I grew up, there was always a question about how it was supposed to be a game for regular local people to come enjoy. Ticket prices got way too high. Corporate sponsors got involved. And it went from being a kind of local thing that happened on the weekend that was super fun for the whole family. And it basically outpriced the very people that were the original fans of it. And then you got the footballers themselves with these huge transfer amounts where people were being transferred for millions of dollars. But now we got to a point where the game, which of course has gone global in various forms, is now intertwined with Middle East peace. I mean, this is just its journey to this point is insane, and really the best way to kind of find the root of this is to follow the money, isn't it?
Always, truly. I mean, look, as someone said to me the other day, why does it matter if Trump intervenes on Infantino's behalf? And I'll say two big reasons. One is State Department on behalf of the president has intervened on various other foreign policy issues on behalf of companies and organizations and countries. Most famously, even reported in the US, was the Occupied Territories Bill in Ireland, where basically the Irish government said they would not purchase West Bank goods, right, anymore, right? Not Israel, not Gaza, but the West Bank, which is Palestinian territory. If Israeli company sells it from there, they will not buy it. The State Department, after Donald Trump threatened them on X or whatever he uses, decided to put all their weight and threaten to pull business from Ireland, which economy depends on the United States, privately, but it became public, that if they didn't end this bill, they would be crippled economically. And it leaked, but they predominantly did that over 3 months without a leak coming out. And the bill has been watered down to the point where Israelis can still sell goods to Ireland. So Infantino is looking for that same pressure, right? If he gets Trump to openly support him himself, because remember, here's the thing with that quote that you read, you know, you and me both know if Trump wants to support you, he'll say it. He doesn't need Zampoli or Rubio or somebody else to say it. He'll say it. In fact, he's been quiet. It's interesting. But if he comes out and says it, Infantino is going to use that to the members of FIFA to say, he's got my back. right? And if he gets close to a close election at the next presidential election in FIFA in March, who's to say that the State Department might not phone the last 10 votes, whether it be Egypt, who takes foreign aid from us, whether it be Japan or everyone else who feel weird about Infantino's corruption, but a prime minister might get a phone call in those countries and they might have to phone their football authority and say, you need to vote for Infantino.
But we've seen this happen, this leverage and this blackmail happen with other things too, invariably with tariffs, where Trump, if he falls out with a country over something else, and it was kind of ironic that Spain won the World Cup, considering that he's fallen out with them and wants nothing to do with them because their own leadership kind of spoke out against him. But he will leverage the power of American trade and other things against countries that he feels are being insubordinate in some way. That makes America a dictatorship, doesn't it? Doesn't it make the former land of the free a kind of now being headed by a despot with personal axes to grind?
100%. Look, America's foreign policy's ticked off a lot of people for a long time, right? It doesn't matter. Domestically, obviously, presidents are very different. I truly believe that. But foreign policy on certain issues has been pretty consistent. And I think to a degree, but most of the European states that are our allies are aligned, whether we like it or not as individuals, right? I don't like our policy in Palestine, but the Europeans and Americans are generally aligned. Russia, Ukraine, whatever, right? There are lots of things where there are views that I think most citizens might not agree with, but politicians are. Trump just, if you fall out a tiny bit, will literally sever ties with allies, cripple economies because of a personal gripe. And you have now a football president who feels the same way. The two were made for each other almost, right? They were literally made for each other. Like, Infantino doesn't like you, so he'll make sure your football authority doesn't get the financial resources to pay its players. This is insanity. This is the same. So they are made for each other. But I think the thing is, Infantino is not Trump. Here's the scary thing with Trump. He has a base. I don't like to say this, but he has fans. Like, he literally has 70 plus million people who would vote for him. And
yeah, he is very popular. And
Infantino
to think
have fans. This is the beautiful thing about this. When you think you're a dictator, but you don't have any, footballers hate him, football fans hate him, most federations hate him, they tolerated him. But this is a moment in time where they're like, no, we're drawing a line in the sand on this issue. And also the push to get rid of him is big, because UEFA, a lot of people who are listening don't know this, European football is the biggest football in the world, not because it's just Europe. Everyone goes to play in Europe, as you articulated earlier on. Brazilians come to England, Argentinians go to Italy, or wherever, like players from Asia, Africa, they all play in the biggest tournaments in Europe throughout the year. And FIFA needs UEFA more than UEFA needs FIFA.
Right.
And if UEFA, who've now threatened to pull out of all the World Cups and all FIFA tournaments, hold that line, who's going to watch a World Cup without these European nations? I actually think, personally, this is an opportunity to abolish FIFA as it exists today, and Europe partner with other continents to create a new entity to take football forward. Because the reality is the top is so corrupt. Because it isn't just Infantino. What was really revealing was everyone's angry he tried to sell off the game. And when Prince Ali went public from the Kingdom of Jordan, he was talking about something completely, he was talking about the corruption of that issue. But he talked about blackmail, which other FIFA leaders knew about. So it wasn't just, this doesn't stop at Gianni Infantino. This is the general secretary. This is the COO, the CFO, people who authorize the payments at that seniorship level. And how many other nations have faced that level of blackmail that don't have a charismatic football authority leader who is in the royal family, who's confident enough to put it out there that this happened? And I look at that thinking, you can't continue as this entity without wiping the slate clean and getting, it's like you can't post-Trump. If there is a post-Trump, which worries me deeply, but if there is, the root and branch removal of what he's done needs to be in its entirety.
Yes.
It's the people he's appointed. It's like the people they've appointed who are civil servants, but that are very aligned to their values. It's a root and branch pull out of everything to actually change anything. Because if you get rid of Infantino, fine. You'll get rid of the grand sell-off to the cushioners. But those guys are not going to give up.
No.
They will be looking to who the next FIFA leader is so they can buy the next World Cup when the environment might be better for them to do it. So there is an opportunity to abolish FIFA and actually create a new entity with all the continents together and say, this needs to be the future of football. Send to fans. Send to those American fans that went in the World Cup and they drove us, Mexican fans, whatever. Have fan representatives, have football representatives. Because while wages are insane, yes, they are playing 100 and something odd games a year. And it is, I think their bodies are breaking because of Infantino and the way he and the game into, they're my product, not that they're not people anymore. And his justification is their salary, but people don't want to go watch a broken product either, right? You have players of world caliber who can't lace up their boots because they're playing too many games because of this crazy president who's trying to milk every dime out of the sport.
But there is a chance that Trump might be backing the wrong horse over this.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, if he's not taking calls from Infantino, then there's a chance that he has begun to realize, because, in the moment, Trump has no idea what he's doing. He just follows his nose, but he reads the newspapers and then, or looks at the pictures, and then he kind of sees where the national conversation is going, and then he'll kind of change tact. So if there's a chance that there is a fallout between those two, and I know that that there's an investigation that I think is being set up. We heard about it this week. UEFA's planning to commission an independent valuation of FIFA's World Cup sale plans. Yeah. And so I think things are probably going to change very quickly. But where does that leave Trump and the fact that he did intervene over that red card and that he did try and get in the picture that Spain eventually photoshopped him out of? Because we have to look at this through the lens of a narcissist. Trump doesn't care about the optics of any of this, does he?
No, he doesn't care about the optics of it. But also, he might have got everything he needed out of Infantino, right? Everyone's disposable to Donald Trump, right? So you made football is soft power, right? And while a lot was wrong with this World Cup, I also have issues with Spain trying to crop him out. I mean, I think it's really, really, because it doesn't show the issues of the World Cup. The issue is Donald Trump, right? You can't just change history because it's a bad photo. The issue is this man did not let tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of fans come to a global tournament because of the country or the color of skin they are from the country they're coming from.
Well, he also prevented players from having enough lead time to be able to play the game properly.
Look, you have Iran, and I know everyone's got their own politics. Look, Iran hasn't bombed anyone actively. The Americans have, right? They're surrounded by American bases. But it's football, right? And there has been many football tournaments with enemies who've never had this level of interference on their squad being able to play the game. From the USSR competing at World Cups to Yugoslavia, to entities within Yugoslavia who were at war with each other who've played at tournaments. Never has a host treated a team the way they've been treated, to the point where right-wing newspapers in the UK and Europe, like the Mail, the Telegraph, were openly condemning the US, saying this is football. Yes. You can be at war with this country, but these guys are playing a game that we all love, and
some things are sacred, right? So soccer, the Olympics, the Commonwealth Games, even the Eurovision Song Contest, for goodness sake, should be a sacred ground for integration and putting politics aside.
And look, it's a Telegraph owned by Axel Springer, which is pretty right wing, and they own Politico, and probably very anti-Iran, because Germany is. Were batting for Iran's team because it felt so wrong. If they had to get to the match, they had to board a flight, so they weren't even allowed to warm down or shower in some cases. Like, they had to get on a flight to get out of the country every time. It was cruelty. The cruelty was the point. They didn't let a Somalian referee, one of the best referees in the world, referee. Like, this guy's refereed all over the world. They said he's a terrorist. Like, they just make things up. Yeah. And the reason I had the problem with Spain shopping, because that should actually symbolize the World Cup a little bit. Yes, I'm grateful Spain won, right team won, but also you don't just change history because you didn't like the picture. That's the full picture of this World Cup. A megalomaniac and his bestie who runs the sport are at the center of this tournament's headlines to a degree. And actually, in knockout rounds at every stage. They were at the center of it.
Right.
Who was going to get out to go to games?
But they were making a point, though, weren't they? I mean, I think that we'd all seen the images of Trump trying to steal the moment. But I think Spain were basically making a point to Donald Trump, and probably just an audience of one.
Right. But I would say
that you are irrelevant to us.
Right. And so I would say there's power in Jesse Owens standing in front of people giving Nazi salutes and receiving his gold medals.
Yeah.
There's power in Spain winning it with Donald Trump present after he's put Spain in it. Yes. I think I'm a historian in this regard. I think it's really important that you tell the full story and people looking back in 50 years' time see what actually happened. Right. We all idolize people like Jesse Owens, who stood in the cauldron of Nazi Germany and received gold medals. To the point where Hitler didn't have the balls to actually give him the medal. Someone else had to do it because the black man proved that Aryan race supremacy idea was wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's like Colin Kaepernick taking the knee as well.
Yes,
I mean, these are moments in sport that impact culture.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that people look back and see the entirety of that win. The interference, whether it is the president's ego or whatever, Infantino's corruption, the picture says it itself. The guy wouldn't get out of the way. I understand Spain's like immediate need to like prove a point.
Right.
I hope when history is told, they show that, because there's also power in that. The idea that the team that he was again economically punished, because the prime minister of Spain wouldn't let them use air bases to bomb Iran because he believes the war is illegal, which it is, to the point where Spain's like, no, we don't want to host you, don't want to use that flight path, nothing. So he decides to economically punish them, but then also like them going to win the tournament in front of him with a team full of.
There's a certain irony that is enjoyed, but do you not think that history will really just focus on that photo with Trump in it? I mean, I think history will Photoshop the photoshopped image out of the timeline.
I know, I hope so. Look, Spain's image to put on their account. I think the majority of the news had Trump in the picture, right? Yeah. So I just think there's a dangerous path there with AI as well, right? You see, and I think people like yourself in the media understand like the importance of learning from history and, moving forward through it. And like, you can't just cherry pick the things that make you feel better in the moment. And I hope that's reported correctly, because also it helps us solve for it, right? It helps us solve the issue that's a stick. It helps us see the demons for who they are. And, and part of why FIFA is so vulnerable, for example, now is just the open visuals of him and Trump together, the corruption, the sell-off, everything. Yeah. You can't remove that from people's psyches. And in this moment in time, it's well documented. So you don't want to change what actually happened because people lose sight of what had to be done to stop this to continue, stopping it continue and repeating in the future. Because like I said, the danger here for FIFA is not completely reformed or the root is not ripped out, or if it's not abolished, is this family. They're going to try and buy the World Cup again. The Christians never stopped, neither of the Trumps. And they will look for the opportune moment to try and make this move again. And I think it's really paramount that UEFA hold the line in the sand, but other people join them in this moment.
Well, this family are also trying to buy Gaza. So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back because I want to talk about the fact that Trump's faux board of peace has issued its first construction contract in the devastated territory. We'll do that next here on The Weekend Show. A brief word on something practical. I'll say this as someone who didn't grow up with the American healthcare system. Medicare is bewildering. Hundreds of plans, shifting rules, and a torrent of marketing, and somehow every option manages to look both official and suspicious at once. Here's the piece most people never hear. Many Medicare agents are paid more to place you in certain plans, which rather explains the quality of the advice on offer. Which brings me to our partner, Chapter. Chapter is the only Medicare advisor that compares every plan nationwide. And they are honest, not paid to steer you toward any particular plan. They'll walk you through your options in plain English. And if you're already on the right plan, they'll simply tell you so. The service is free, takes under 20 minutes, and has saved people an average of $1,100 a year. If you're on Medicare, or soon will be, make it easy on yourself. Call Chapter at 334-441-3570. We're back on The Weekend Show with Ashish Prashar. I'm Anthony Davis. I want to talk to you about the Middle East, because you have expertise there as well. And it is interesting how the topic of football or soccer kind of intertwines, as we said earlier. Donald Trump's Board of Peace, which was set up in January to oversee supposedly the reconstruction of Gaza, it's finally issued its first construction contract in the devastated territory. It's a project to build a rudimentary 150-person military outpost to house Moroccan troops. The contract has not yet been finalized, but it was awarded to Arkel International, a Louisiana-based firm that has previously carried out work with the U.S. government in countries such as Iraq. As we know, the Board of Peace is chaired by Donald Trump. He can veto any policy. He can also, I think he also can't be superseded, as far as I'm aware. But his son-in-law Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff obviously hold senior positions in that Board of Peace too. Ashish, to me, when this Board of Peace was first created, it seems like Donald Trump wanted his own version of the United Nations. That he, ultimately he wanted to kind of pull the US out of the UN, certainly out of NATO, and create his own organization that kind of superseded the UN, but also superseded his presidency, so that as and when he was to leave the White House, that he was still king of the world.
Where do you want to unpack this? The Board of Peace is a special kind of criminal entity, but it is his version of the UN that serves, right? So,
and we should probably remind people that the only countries that really signed up to the Board of Peace were all of the worst kind of criminal nations, and all of the kind of civilized democratic nations refused to sign up to be part of it.
But also, I would argue a lot of civilized democratic nations can do enough to prevent the Board of Peace also. And that's part of the problem, right? So it kind of taps into if we let something happen too many times, they just take advantage of the situation. Look, as you know, spent the majority of my career in the Middle East and in actual politics, not football. This is more of a recent thing. And the Board of Peace, look, is constructed of people who, yes, they are corrupt nations. Like Pakistan's current prime minister is in prison, and they have a military autocrat in charge, and they're on it. But Tony Blair, who is a war criminal, who I've worked for, but when he's the Middle East envoy, he is a war criminal. Iraq was illegal. Melnadev, who was the other Middle East envoy, not known, also known for his corruption in the role. It's the worst of the worst, right? To in essence create an environment where Trump can use an entity where he can promote a version of peace that supersedes the UN, bilateral agreements, partnerships, treaty organizations, but also use it as a replicatable model, right? So a border peace for Venezuela, a border peace for every country, and Trump will be the chair of these entities wherever they appear. The Gaza was the model that he could export everywhere. And the majority of people who are integrating with it are effectively vassal states. Yeah, even Morocco. People don't want to hear this because I'm obviously, deeply, pro-liberation of Palestine, and the Moroccan people are, but the Moroccan government and its entities and its military are very, very pro-Israel. And it's to the point where they're going to be the police force of a modern day Warsaw ghetto. Like, this is not, if you are an ally of those people, you're not going to be their police force. History will look at that, not particularly good. The Board of Peace is nothing but a real estate development company pretending to be, and an extraction company pretending to be an entity for peace, right? To get to the point. In Gaza, it's about rebuilding it with contractors that they want to line pockets with and exterminating the population that exists there slowly by squeezing it. Because right now, the horrific firebombing genocide has stopped. But now you have a population that has been in genocide for nearly 3 years. They die of diseases, heart failures, malnutrition, bug bites, things that we are vaccinated from, right? You have kids that are born in it and dying in it, right? They're not going to be a Gaza for Palestinians after this. And what they're trying to show is through the Board of Peace, their version of success is they clear it out redevelop it and extract gas from its off its shoreline. And they expect this model to be put everywhere else they decide is going to be theirs to take. Venezuela might not have a border police right now because it's a complying government. But if they decided Delcy Rodriguez was needed to be moved on, they would put a border police there to extract the Venezuelan oil. They're not interested in redeveloping Venezuela. They're more interested in just taking the oil. And the border police would be like, we're setting up a model though, give Venezuela some money, but we're going to take the majority of it, right? But they're going to get some money. So it's a border peace. We're bringing people in Venezuela together. And that's basically what he's trying out with Gaza. And I think the crime here is he set it up and the people who participated in it are horrible. But also the crime is the UN let it get set up. It is a replacement for the UN. The UN Security Council voted this through. It was an opportunity for China, Russia, and people who, with any conscience, frankly, in Europe to pull the plug and veto it. But I think everyone was scared to veto the proposed ceasefire in the moment. And the Trump administration used that ceasefire of saying, well, if Russia vetoes it, you're evil. China vetoes it, you're evil.
Right.
Britain, America, France, if you abstain it, you're not morally like you say
but
you are.
They were also worried about repercussions of tariffs.
Right.
Because, so these countries are looking at their own kind of docket on trade, and they recognize that they need America more than America needs them.
Agreed.
And so that has become a huge point of leverage as well.
Especially with the Europeans. Less so with China, who is its own entity, but like the Europeans completely they have no choice, almost, you could argue. But I mean, they do have a choice. I would say Spain is proving the point that you can actually thrive. It's the fastest growing country in Europe right now, and it decided to cut the US off. So,
and there are some countries that are doing this. I mean, Canada has decided to kind of go it alone and has set up new alliances. But it does seem that many of America's former allies, including much of Europe, is now very much considered, certainly by the Trump regime, to be a kind of enemy of the state.
100%. The Europeans are. And the problem with the Europeans is that you're scared to move on. Right. And I think some of it has to do with a great mentor of mine, Jonathan Powell, who negotiated the Good Friday Agreement in Ireland.
Yes.
Under Tony Blair, early when Blair had like a positive reputation, said to me, I worry that it's our racism. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, okay, this makes sense to me. Like, even hearing it from him, like, I worry it's our racism. It's like, see, when the European powers collapsed after World War II, handing power to the United States of America to be the world leader was natural because even though it's an indigenously diverse country, it's a white country leadership, right? Europeans can't follow China because they're racist about it. Leaders, not people, leaders. Right. The idea that China is the number one country in the world just doesn't feel well for European leaders. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think about it. Like, wow, are we that messed up that we can't?
But this is the shifting world order. As we
should be aligning ourselves, at least on a trade level, with a country that just actually wants to trade. Let's just be clear. You don't have to agree with everything China does. And there is a lot of misinformation about China, but let's say you don't agree with everything they do. On trade, they're pretty fair and they're pretty open. The Europeans have a problem with the fact that they're better at designing, developing, and creating stuff. And then actually, there's one or two countries in Europe holding all of Europe back from decoupling from the United States. See, it's France and Germany. It's that simple. Spain had decided to make their bed. They're in partnership with China on so many trade things. Spain produces mass food. It's a food-producing country. China produces other goods. They've built up several trade agreements since the Trump tariffs started. They are the fastest growing economy in Europe. Germany's scared of its famous car industry collapsing because China makes better cars. It's really that simple. And they're willing to hold and collapse Europe and tie it to the United States. Even though the United States sees, as J.D. Vance famously said, you're our welfare state. Yeah. You know, like, we give you money. Like, our people holiday there and, you know, we have bases there. You're our welfare state. And to a degree, I think Europeans have just let that happen. That's the joke of it. Like, we're comfortable in this relationship. We never questioned it for so long. Like, Iraq was at one time where several European powers stood up to the US. France, famously. Other countries wouldn't go in, saying this is illegal. Yeah. They didn't really hold America to account for the well, they didn't hold Bush account for the illegality, or Blair. So they allowed it to happen. So now we're in this situation where actually I don't really believe Trump wants the Strait of Hormuz open, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I've been saying this to people for a long time. I've been posting.
Well, it's making him rich as long as it's closed.
Making him rich. It's actually making America an energy superpower. America, by seizing Venezuela, by also seizing other resources through new allegiances in South America, for example, governments going right, maybe election interference in the likes of Colombia and other places, where these guys now who've not traded with America are going to be openly sending America all their resources. There's also new gas pipelines popping up left, right, and center from American allies in the Caucasus, south of Russia, to get gas to American allies in Europe. Basically, if the Strait of Hormuz closes, the world is punished but the United States. Everyone keeps saying he's crashing the US economy. He's not, actually. And he's doing other things to crash the US economy.
Right.
To be absolutely clear. Actually, he's making the US an energy superpower.
Well, we just heard that ExxonMobil and then some of these kind of massive energy companies have profited to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars as a result of this war.
And actually,
we also know through financial disclosures that Trump invested himself personally in these companies last year. So it benefits him, it benefits America, but also, and this is really a question, does it benefit Russia too? Because, you know, we forget to talk about Russia sometimes because they seem to be, you know, kind of playing things down at the moment, letting the drones do all the work. But I recognize that Russia, which has its own energy independence, is actually benefiting from this fight between the East and the West, and certainly the fight in Iran.
Well, yes and no. I mean, Ukraine is, and America, I mean, the US was responsible for that pipeline being exploded really early in the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. And Ukraine exploding it, which was severely damaging for European energy reserves. I actually think they don't want gas to be coming in from Russia, frankly. They actually, America sees Europe as its number one future client for gas. It would rather they not be able to get gas from the Middle East and oil and cut off Russian supplies to Europe by letting Ukraine bomb them. The reason Ukraine can target some of these energy facilities is American satellites. Let's just be clear. He's not Zelensky's friend. He's not Ukraine's ally, but hey, I'm going to make a lot of money. So if they can knock out a few Russian pipelines that are going to Europe, and the Europe is forced to buy liquefied natural gas from the United States this coming fall and winter, my God, Donald Trump's going to make a lot of money. So are his friends and allies and partners in the energy industry. Yes, the average American is not going to make shit. Sorry for my language. From all the energy that we are stealing, and
well, gas prices are not going to go down as a result of the war ending. I mean, that's the reality that people are starting to realize.
And it's really about his friends getting rich. And actually, I don't think Russia's benefiting. Honestly, people want to, I know that's a narrative. People want to go, oh, they're benefiting from this because Trump and Putin might be allies. I actually think Trump cares so much more about money, his energy people, than even Putin in this case. To actually care what Russia's situation is. Also, Russia and China trade enough that way where, you know, it's negligible. But like their biggest customer was Europe before this conflict, and they definitely are seeing impacts on their reserves through that because, you know, again, the most famous pipeline that the Ukrainians blew up in the first few months of the war was okayed by the US, as we've now been reported in the Times and everything else. But moreover, they're now targeting deliberately the energy pipelines and reserves that go into Europe, which if I'm in Europe right now, I'm thinking, God, no one has planned for this fall or winter. No one has planned for this. And the squeeze on Hormuz, now you're seeing the Suez Canal is going to be basically shut down with Ansar Allah and going into conflict with Saudi Arabia, who, you know, attacks a proxy of one of Iran's allies in Iraq. You know, like it's kicking off everywhere, and the US is not going to try and slow it down by any stretch of the imagination. And then the Russia not being able to get gas into Europe, really Europeans are going to be crippled by that. And obviously Americans aren't seeing a reduction, but Europe doesn't have the gas reserves that the US has. You're seeing European leaders right now make independent deals with North African countries like Algeria, who has mass gas reserves, and Libya, obviously, which actually, ironically, for Europe would have been safer when Gaddafi was in power because he had a really amazing pipeline to Europe, which was destroyed by the Obama administration.
Do you think the Europeans have taken too long to recognize that Donald Trump is this dangerous? Because I think that there is that this whole, I mean, in England, when we talk about the special relationship between the UK and the US, born of the Second World War, Margaret Thatcher and Reagan kind of coined that phrase, although some attribute it to Churchill. But from my experience in the United States, nobody seems to know that phrase. I mean, it doesn't really have any value whatsoever. America does not consider the relationship between the UK and the US special, and certainly not since the days of Reagan. And I don't know, I'd say now under Trump, it doesn't exist at all. So if we just lump the UK in with Europe for a second, and we've seen this with European leaders, and it's very hard to say, isn't it, with some of these, because Europe is a little bit fractured, despite the Union kind of trying to hold it together. It's a little bit fractured. But have they kind of underestimated quite how Donald Trump would be happy to bring the whole world down, and as long as America kind of remained supreme?
I think Europe just never thought the world would change on them. Right? It's very comfortable, right? Nothing radical happens that much. And I think the reality with Europe is that America can do all our dirty work. They can go bomb a country, get oil for us. Look, let's just be very clear. Europe's not innocent, because everyone picks on Americans with this. And it also bothers me as someone in Europe right now, that America's a demon, America's this, right? When we collapsed Libya, and with all due respect to people who are Obama's fans, that was illegal. I worked for his ministry. That was illegal. Right, Ben Rhodes has called it illegal. Everybody now is like, we went in under a lie, right? When we did that, who benefited from that? Gaddafi had one of the richest countries in the entire continent. All that gold's gone. And it wasn't just the United States that took that gold. France, Britain, Germany sit on coffers of Libyan gold. Publicly reported right now, held for security reasons in our banks, not in Libya. And the gas for a few years was run by European companies without having to pay Libyan people. Europe is not innocent in America's ventures across the world and has benefited from them. And they now have a president who's like, well, we've basically been taking care of you. Screw you. And they never thought about making up a backup plan. Yes, leaders historically have taken care of Europe and been allies, because they've needed the NATO part of it too, right? They've needed this military front. It's not just America going after you. It's a coalition. The word that Bush made so famous in the Iraq invasion, the coalition of the willing, all these like nations coming together to intervene, to kill a dictator. I mean, it's mind blowing that Europe never thought that this could ever expire. Like every other country has always been on the wrong end of this. Has always thought about this. The most comfortable man in the world right now is Kim Jong-un. I said he knew that one day they would come for him after watching Gaddafi. Let's just be very clear. Who did he watch? He didn't watch Iran, Russia. He was like, oh my God, I need a nuke, because my God, they might do this to me one day. They might, cause a coup or raid my country, and I will be sodomized to death like Gaddafi. That is horrific. And he decided all in for that to protect my country and me. Quietest front in the world. He might actually be able to build a fostering relationship with South Korea, because South Korea is now worried about the United States of America. And they might have their first formal trade agreement within this year. They might open that border. The world is changing, and Europe just decided never to change the way they did it. And I think Europe should be responsible for its own actions in this case.
Yeah. Well, it is scrambling now to build munitions and because they can't even really purchase military equipment from the United States.
No.
Because there's no guarantee that it'll work forever. I mean, they just remotely turn stuff off. So I feel like in a way it's kind of good for industry. Ironically, it's brought the UK and Europe closer together. The UK, obviously, its second biggest export is arms. And so, I think that there has been a shift, and Brexit is almost being nullified organically without it being said out loud. But that is through necessity. And it's the same for the people that voted for England to leave or for the UK to leave the EU. They never thought that there would be
something that's really not important. You said Europe's fractured, and nothing showed that more than the past week with this fake, like Moroccan orchestrated invasion of a Spanish territory in North Africa, where they really touched on the xenophobia in some other European states, where they have actually cut off Schengen, the free trade to Spain, the free movement in Spain. And it took one orchestrated event to actually make that happen. And
it's money and racism. I mean, these are the two things that kind of seem to be directing the world. But in the same way that the world hadn't really planned for a pandemic either. And so you suddenly had 3 years in the middle of all of this timeline that caused a certain international chaos where countries were really doing their own thing. I mean, there really wasn't any kind of joined up plan amongst the world about world nations. And that to me was holding a mirror up to quite how segregated these countries are.
And the reality is, like, European leaders who want to survive this need to make their own deals in the rest of the world. Look, Spain had done it. Italy's trying to do it. I've seen Meloni, again, a fascist, but like realizes the writing's on the wall. And she's still trying to foster a relationship with Trump, of course, because there's so many military bases all over Italy. But at the same time, she's traveled to China 3 times in the last 7 months and they already have a relationship, right? So a lot of fabrics, materials, stuff for fashion houses in Milan are made in Wuhan, and other places in China. So they already have this burgeoning relationship with free visa stuff that already happens. They're just trying to build on it, but they're moving slow. But then you have economic powers in Europe like Germany and France who are just stubborn and refuse to move, but they were going to literally kill off their own economies.
Yes, it's going to cost them massively.
Huge. In Germany specifically, because here's the thing, German public, like you mentioned, arms is going to be the great thing. And the problem is the German public is so dead against the arms thing
because of the generational trauma associated with the war.
100%. So they've already tried to do 2 new big arms contracts, and some of these companies are still kind of half publicly owned, like 49% shareholders, 51% ownership, where the 49% rejected the military contract. And it's intriguing because it's showing where maybe the public are, and they'd like them to be a bit more innovative and thoughtful about working with the rest of the world. And our leaders are, who are stuck in this like doom loop of working with the United States and trashing their own economies in the process. And I worry about, the big thing I'm worrying about also is food.
Yes.
Food. Look, people in the US are suffering from these bacterial infections of every other item right now because there's no standards since the FDA has been gutted by the Muppet Kennedy right now. But also, like, this isn't exclusively a problem for the US anymore. Look, you're seeing climate change burn through European food supplies right now as crops are going to be devastated this upcoming year. And obviously the fertilizer issue coming out of both Ukraine and Iran.
Yes.
So planting food and supplying it. And the only people ask me, what do I do? Because it's affecting everybody. And like, look at countries that actually sell food and actually produce food and make it locally. That is Spain, ironically. That is Italy. That is actually Southern European countries, not the traditional motor hardened industry powerhouses of Northern Europe that don't make it, that don't produce their own food. And the worry around the world right now is, where is that supply, right? China, for example, for 1.3 billion people has 18 months food supply in reserve ready for this moment. Switzerland has a computer system that's just way before AI and everything else, where it's part of like your residency stuff there. You can literally enter like your consumption of food and they restock their government supplies.
Wow.
Based on what you do as a family of 2, 3, 4, 5. In fact, changes over time. You just update it and people go, oh, that's surveillance. But also, wait, they're thinking about this food pandemic that could come. Yes. Like, well, we'll be okay. The UK has no food reserves.
No.
Germany has no food reserves. The United States produces its own food, but also we had a really hot summer with the crops being damaged in Ohio, Iowa, and everywhere else. But it's impacting that food reserve that we have. There are lots of countries that are allies who are modern, industrialized European countries that do not have this plan in place right now, and it's
Well, it'll be the next pandemic, won't it? It'll be the food shortages. I mean, parts of America already see food deserts anyway, where people can't get access to fresh food. But to start to see that globally, especially when you've got the infiltration of disease, as we've seen. Finally, I want to talk about Iran, because Tehran has set out a protracted negotiating timetable designed to keep Donald Trump embroiled in the conflict, it seems, until the midterm elections, in the hope of inflicting the same ruinous blow on his presidency as Jimmy Carter suffered over the U.S. embassy hostage crisis in 1979. For many inside Iran, inflicting meaningful revenge on Trump is a legitimate and self-standing war aim after the assassination of the Ayatollah Khomeini. It does seem that Iran is slightly better at the chess moves at the moment. You know, Donald Trump doesn't appear, or certainly his henchmen don't appear to have the negotiating skills. I mean, I loved it when Iran were like, we don't want that guy, J.D. Vance. We ain't talking to that guy.
Yeah, they're very clear. They're very clear.
Very clear. And they seem to be, to almost be more honest in their communique.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I 100%. Look, they're truthful. Like, here's the thing, right? I think some of our former generals who comment on MSNBC going, I'm getting my news about the negotiations from the Iranians.
Right.
Yeah, and that's not even, but I also want to say, like, I think it's the arrogance of us not realizing what we've done, right? We've done this, to people who don't understand this, the Ayatollah is like the Pope. And we killed their Pope. And if we were maybe more religious, we'd go to war and want revenge for that. He is the leader of a religion, part of Islam. And we decided it was a good idea to just wipe him out. And his entire family, his granddaughters, not caring about the consequences. Also, like, and then in the same week, in the same day, bombing a school, bombing a girls' school. And our missiles don't go away. So someone in Pete Hegseth's team deliberately targeted a school. Let's just be very clear. These are Tomahawk missiles that CNN used to put cameras on the front of that could hit a bus moving at high speed. They don't miss. You know, the issue here is that Donald Trump is being outplayed. But I would actually say Iran shouldn't have slowed down. Look, there is a real case for the rest of the world that wants the United States, frankly, Americans want this, out of the Middle East in its entirety. And Iran has almost decolonized the US from the Middle East. There is no one on bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, Dubai at this point is empty of American bases. They've all relocated to Jordan. There's one base in Syria and obviously predominantly in Israel, all the American troops over there. They have base in Saudi Arabia as well, but like the troops that have evacuated from the Gulf have relocated to Jordan. They've decolonized the Middle East. And I think a lot more Middle Eastern nations are probably happy, or the populations might be more happy than that our media is allowing our mainstream media is allowing to tell. Look, they've outplayed him. My only thing for Iran is, and Iranians, like, this president is unhinged. He has an ally, Netanyahu, who's unhinged, who most people agree is unhinged at this point. And they are willing to burn the world down, actually. And that should still keep Iran's guard up. The reason they've defeated the US in this, in both the 12-day thing with Israel directly last year in 2025, and obviously the more recent war with both the US and Israel, is they designed for this happening their whole existence. Remember, since 79, you brought up Jimmy Carter. They've always worried about the threat of an American invasion. And actually, George Bush, by invading Iraq, their neighbor, and showing them how the US does what it does, showed them the roadmap of how the US invades, attacks, and occupies a country. And Iran is prepared for this. And in that process, they had a general who Trump assassinated in his first time, called General Soleimani, who this has all been well documented. He's written up a playbook to tackle just the United States of America, and designed an IRGC that was decentralized in the mountains, all operation independently. We just don't have the military guile to tackle this. They have designed to be invaded. They've always thought of us as the threat. So they've planned for this while we just bomb countries. So we're not really designing tactics to target a specific nation and decouple it. We just think our force of will make them surrender. And here's the thing. Iran is not a single dictator nation. It's a civilized country that has thousands of years of history, that has been of empires, and understands what conflict looks like. And they were fully prepared for this. And under sanctions, think about this. And this is what I think has caught a lot of people in Europe off guard as well. Under sanctions have developed some of the most advanced missile technology in the history of missile technology. They have hypersonic missiles that split apart and avoid every interceptor we've had. That's why our interceptors are gone. Right. Like, they developed this thinking that we would attack them one day. Obviously, they thought, we don't want to be attacked. Nobody wants to be attacked. No one wants their population murdered, massacred, and genocided in some other cases. But they had decided that they would make sure they had a plan for this eventual potential day. And every American president before him knew these risks, even without knowing what Soleimani and co have designed. Right. But they weren't stupid enough to do this.
And that really is what all of this hinges on, is that we have a president who was stupid enough to do this, who was manipulated by Netanyahu, yes, but still didn't have the foresight to say no and look at history. And Trump turns that phrase on its head and says, no other president was able to do this, but I am. And that is the kind of great irony of this moment, not least in the deaths of dozens of U.S. service personnel, and not least Iranian civilians, and the girls in that school, totaling almost 200, with teachers as well. History will not look kindly on this, but also from an international law perspective, Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and Netanyahu, they're kind of stuck now, aren't they? Yeah. They almost just need to keep going, because the moment this ends, then they become fair game under international law, and that is a big problem for them.
It is. I mean, the only thing I would say about that for people listening is we need to, the struggle to hold up international law is happening in real time, simultaneous to this war. They've successfully dismantled the ICC, the one court that can hold them accountable. They're dismantling other legal treaties, and they've almost got European governments over the barrel with tariffs that they're okay with letting some of these laws disappear. And there is a real fight. If it's not this current law, at least take elements of it as a framework to build a new international law after this, because there is a lot of people that, if we never hold accountable now, will set up a new normal, which is an era of monsters, right? This is a generation that needs to be put away, because if we don't, we are setting up a generation for our kids and our grandkids with a lawless world at this point. There is frameworks here that still exist that some people are still trying to honor. Frankly, Iran has been more on the international law side than the US specifically on this. I mean, they have literally specifically only targeted American bases, not civilians. In fact, in the first week of the Iran war, the US troops, in a Hegseth did this, moved US troops into a civilian hotel, putting civilians at risk in the UAE. Like, the insanity of man. He moved weapons and people to a hotel. And Iran justifiably can take out the flaws that they're on. I mean, the devaluing of life and precedent and how we operate is being done by this generation of leadership that needs to be held accountable. But I don't know if it will be this law that exists today. I think we're going to need a tribunal pulled together by whatever's left of good countries at the end of this to actually hold them accountable, because it's not going to be in the current institutions. To your point, the UN's pretty much done. It has no teeth. And if the ICC is gone, we'll need to have a separate tribunal to hold them accountable.
Okay. We have to finish, but I'm grateful to you for your opinions, but also your expertise. For now, Ashish Prashar, thanks for joining The Weekend Show. I'm Anthony Davis. Don't forget to support me and independent journalism on Substack at The Anthony Davis. And I'll come back next Sunday with a brand new special guest and more factual news to discuss on the 5 Minute News Weekend Show with Midas Touch.